So we performed for a community called Brightstone, which takes care of adults with special needs.
We had theater do some of their Christmas skits, choir sang some songs, guitar played some songs, and then at the end we all sang together with the people of Brightstone.
All of our students at Brightstone love music, and it's a very important part of our program. So anytime they can interact with other people and smile, I think it's important so that they can have that connection. And it's also just to open ourselves up to new people, to new experiences. Because if we close off that whole group of people, then we're not able to learn from them.
I'm a strong believer in the value of just the joy of music. And spreading that with other people, I always love to just have that opportunity, no matter who it's for, but it was especially nice to do that for these people today.
I saw some smiles. I thought the people in the audience really enjoyed it. They seemed very engaged. They liked laughing with us. They liked clapping with us. So it was awesome as an actor to see the audience enjoying it.
So while we were singing, they were up cheering, laughing, clapping. They were all smiling while we were singing. It was really great.
They like the fun, the funny parts, the things they know, the songs they know. For me personally, I love the jazz ensemble. I thought all the songs are great, but I just really personally enjoyed those. But the students just love to laugh and interact, and if it's a song they know, then that really gives them some joy and comfort.
But I would say my most favorite part would be at the end when everyone got the jingle bells and was just singing together, the Christmas carols at the very end.
About 3 or 4 years ago, I went to a PTO meeting and I was talking to the different moms and different people within the PTO, and they came and were asking what are different ideas. And one of the ideas I came up with, I remembered when I was a little girl, I was able to go shop for my family and friends, to be able to give those gifts back to them without them being able to see it. To see them be able to do that has brought joy to all of the little elves that have helped along the way too. So the store itself is called the Winter Wonderland Holiday Shop for Sunset Elementary.
The Winter Wonderland is a type of shop where you get lots of Christmas presents for other people. I got some for my family and my friends.
The mom, dad, sister, brothers is really like keychains, and one of our big sellers this year was mugs that say mom and dad. So just the kids being able to give those loving different presents to them has done really well this year. With being able to make the store, I'm so thankful that we have had great support from the staff and the principal, and they really joined our PTO group and really also supported this for the community to be able to host such a great event.
And I love it because it has so many beautiful toys and good gifts for Christmas presents for kids and everything, and lots of parents and friends.
This is PHS Studios.
My name is Colonel Chris Francis. I'm a native of Franklin. I'm an Air Force pilot. I'm a proud Patriot father, 2 Patriots, 1 Panther, huge Patriot football fan. I'll be in Chattanooga tonight. I am not a recruiter. All right. I am proud to serve, and I'm truly honored to call myself a friend of your guest speaker today, Captain Jerry Neal. This is all 11th grade, yeah? So we're all 16 and 17 years old, except for us. You're thinking about Christmas, your senior years, college, perhaps even a career after war. Jerry recently celebrated his 102nd birthday. So in 1938, he would have been no different than you are. At your age, there was a charismatic leader in Germany called Adolf Hitler who was violating all the treaties that were set at the end of World War I and is preparing an invasion of Czechoslovakia and then Poland. and he would bring the entire world to war. Less than 5 years after that happened, young Jerry Neal was already flying bomber missions, softening the German defenses preparing for the D-Day invasion in 1944. Over the next few weeks, your history teachers are going to talk you through World War II. They're going to describe the sheer magnitude of the effort in terms of men and equipment. There's only one person in the room today who can describe what that number of ships on the English Channel looked like preparing for the invasion of Normandy. There's only one person here who can tell you how cold it was in an open, unpressurized bomber at 25,000 feet in June of 1944. Captain Neal was there. Like so many other Americans, he volunteered to be there. Decades later, a famous news anchor you might have heard of named Tom Brokaw coined his The Greatest Generation. Captain Neal was in the air with great military names you might know, like Jimmy Doolittle. He served alongside Hall of Fame baseball players like Ted Williams and Bob Feller. He was in the air with Hollywood actors like Jimmy Stewart.
Clark Gable.
Clark Gable.
Clark Gable was a gunner.
Like all of them and him, no Americans were spared the responsibility to serve in some capacity. And 80 years later, we have the chance to live in this community, in this state, in this nation, free thanks to his service. On June 6, 1944, the Allies used nearly 12,000 aircraft. 12,000 aircraft to support the invasion of Europe. The 8th Air Force supported that with over 2,000 bombers, something like 20,000 airmen. This morning you have the rarest of privileges to hear from the last surviving bomber pilot who flew a mission on D-Day. Please help me welcome Page High School, a true national treasure, Captain Jerry Neal.
I thank you for this invitation, and I appreciate being in front of the rising young patriots of Page High School, because you guys are the leaders of the coming leaders of the world. You have an awesome responsibility. And I'm sitting here today to talk to you a little bit about history, because I am actually a walking history book. I was born in 1921 on the east side of Kansas City, Missouri. Graduated from high school in 1938 when the war clouds were thick and heavy over Europe and the Pacific, with Japan advancing all over the place. And basically at that time our country was isolationist, and we say we don't have any part of all of that because we're protected by two oceans. Well, then we became aware that we were in the sights of Hitler. He was going to invade our country. That was part of his plan. And the country turned to be totally patriots, very patriotic. And we started to the Lend-Lease program. And as I was graduated from school, and I was working in a large corporation in a minor job, going to a junior college to learn accounting, 1938. Previous to that time, the 20s when I was born, it was an opulent period. It was just the country was just afloat with money. And then the Black Friday of 1929 hit us, and everything went bankrupt. And my family, who had considerable properties and business and so forth, all went, they just were reduced to one drugstore. My grandfather, who was a physician-trained pharmacist, had one drugstore, and we lived in the 30s, the decade of the 30s, out of that drugstore. Worked there, and it was our sustenance. The 30s were the tough time. This country's gone through an awful lot of periods of very, very tough times. You may remember from history of the Dust Bowls, the 35 and 36 heat waves. Actually, the Dust Bowl, the dust came into Kansas City out of Kansas and Colorado so heavy that it was like night. You had to wear wet towels around your nose and mouth to breathe. And it was a miserable time. times like we're doing now, different times. But as we grew into, obviously, that we were going to go to war, my boyhood friend, Glenn, and I received our draft cards, the first draft that the country had ever had. And we were 1A. We were definitely going to be pulled in, probably into the Army. And so Glenn and I, as we were driving around in his old Model A Ford, we're talking about what can we do. Well, you know, I didn't particularly want to be just drafted into the Army because all I had pictures of was World War I, which was trench warfare, gases, mustard gas, and so forth. And we talked about that a little bit. I said, no, I guess we don't want to do that. And said, well, how about the Navy? And I said, no, I haven't seen any water. There isn't any water around Kansas City. So at the time we were driving around, interestingly enough, had a little radio that hung underneath the instrument panel in the old car, and we heard this announcer talk about a new strategy that was going to be developed for the invasion. They knew there was going to be an invasion, didn't know what. And of course they had the parachute operations in, but now they're talking about using gliders to glide troops in behind the enemy lines. And what the announcer said was they were looking for candidates to be glider pilots. And further on he said, in order to be interested in that, and if you want to sign up for the glider pilot program, you take an aviation cadet examination and fail it. And I looked at Glenn, and he looked at me and said, we can do that. We did take the exam, and it was in the post office in Kansas City, Kansas. And long story short, I ended up with my test scores being high enough that they immediately came out and put me in the Air Corps, the Army Air Corps, for pilot training. Now get this, young people, I'd never been close to an airplane. It's hard for you to believe. Never seen one on the field. The only airplane I'd ever seen was in the newspaper pictures or the newsreels that we went to when we went to the new. Now they're selecting me to be a pilot. I mean, it was wild to think about that. And, so I went to San Antonio, Texas to start my pilot training. And as we went down with the troop train, it was picking up these people, the candidates, to go to the school. It was interesting to watch as we stopped these little towns down through Kansas, Oklahoma, toward Texas. And we see these young kids coming up to get on the train, actually wearing cardboard suitcases or knapsacks with sticks. All of them very, very lean, obviously very tough, because they'd been through a decade. This was a rural economy. They'd been raised on farms in hardship, and they were all tough. Very, very lean and muscle and tough. Now, that's what we need today. And I'm not sure that we have, other than you young people in this room who are patriots, that we have that group of young people that can rise to the occasion like we did in 1939, 1940, 41. In any event, as we reached San Antonio, started my pilot training, I did a year of pilot training to get my aeronautical rating and my commission as a second lieutenant. One of the events I wanted to talk about a little bit in my primary flight training, which was an open cockpit airplane, the pilots, the trainers, were old airline pilots. They were civilians. They knew how to fly by the seat of their pants. But in any event, when I soloed, which I was proud of, and I went out for a mission one day I flew out, and my mission was to do aerobatics, which was split S's, Immelmans, stalls, split, and I did a few of those, and I came out and I started flying straight, and I thought, well, it's time to go back to base because my fuel's getting low. And I had no idea where I was. after all these maneuvers and so forth. The point I want to make of this is you don't know where you're going until you know where you've been. So I'm glad to learn that you're learning history, because without the history of this country, without the knowledge of the sacrifices that have been made over the many centuries, so that we can be sitting here, excuse me, sitting here today talking, not speaking German or Japanese, that we have the freedom, is due to the fact that we have history and knew where we were, we knew where we were going. After I completed flight training and went to what we call phase training, with a B-24 training up in Mountain Home, Idaho, that was the B-24 was a large airplane, among the largest flying aircraft in the world. 4 engines, got 1,200 horsepower engines. It was huge. So we got our movement orders after we were trained, and we went as a group individually. We started going to England. We were assigned to the 8th Air Force. The route that we took was interesting. We went from Mountain Home, Idaho to Lincoln, Nebraska. I picked up a new B-24, just like we go into the dealership and getting a new car, and it's wonderful, because I've been flying old Wearies. Had a new B-24 out of Consolidated Factory, Fort Worth, Texas. And we flew then down to Florida. We went from Florida to Puerto Rico to a base that had been carved out of the Amazon jungle along the Amazon River. It was interesting. Went from there to Fortaleza, Brazil, and from Fortaleza, Brazil, at 9 o'clock one night, we took off and jumped across the South Atlantic Ocean. No GPS type instrumentation, navigation. Just had a navigator who gave us a route, and we had to cross the dam. We actually had to put an extra fuel tank in a bomb bay in order to jump over that river, over the ocean. It was a long flight, and we had no idea that our navigator would know exactly how to get to the base in Africa, at Dakar. But he hit it right on the base, and we were right there on time, landed, refueled, and headed out to French West Africa. We crossed the Sahara Desert, the Atlas Mountains, and here I am, a young kid. I'd studied all this stuff in history, and there I'm living it. I'm seeing camel caravans on the Sahara Desert. I'm crossing the Atlas Mountains that I'd read about. And we landed at Marrakesh, stayed overnight at Marrakesh, refueled, and headed up to England. Got to England and went across, we hit England at Land's End on the western port. Went across to England and landed at headed in for the airfield that we were going to be based at. And as we got to the base, I was flying about 5,000 feet at that time, and I got close to it, so I radioed in and asked for landing instructions, and they gave me landing instructions, and I said, well, I can see 5 bases. Which one are you? So they shot up a flare. Oh, okay. So I made a circle to do the landing procedure, and as I turned 180, 360, which base are you? So I had to shoot up another flare. It was weird. Anyway, those bases in England for the 8th Air Force, probably 15, 18 bases by the end of World War II, were all in the little bulge of England facing Europe, and it's called East Anglia. We got down on a base, and we got our assignments to where we were going to sleep and I got assigned get this, a shoulder holster 45. right here. Boy, I am big time. Now I've got a .45 pistol. I'm dangerous. So, because the German Luftwaffe was flying in assassins at night, dropping in by parachute, and they were trying to kill pilots. So they assigned a .45 for personal protection. I wouldn't know what to do with it, if I'd seen it. In any event, we started flying, and I guess the thing I'd like to talk to you a little bit about is one of the missions. We get a little more specific about it. We had completed the second mission. Had landed. It was about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon from the mission, and we'd been over in the low country. And our plane was so shot up and aircraft fire that it was no longer flyable. Now, that was the second B-24 that we flew back that was no longer flyable. And I was told, at the time I thought they were serious. They said, "Lieutenant Neal, you're going to be charged with these planes, $250,000 apiece." Well, it went on the file, of course, but you know it was charged. But the second B-24, so now we debrief from that mission. We go to dinner, go to our bunks in our little Nissan hut, waiting because we knew we had a mission the next day. We always knew at night that we were going to fly the next day when we were going to fly. So we were all lying under in 8 bunks in this little building, metal building, and we're just lying there, supposedly asleep, but we weren't. 2 o'clock, the orderly comes in and wakes us up, tells us we'll be in briefing and what time and so forth. So we go to breakfast and go to the light and get our uniforms on, and we go to briefing. Now, the briefing is a large room similar to this, where there's going to be 36 planes flying. So that's 10 airmen per plane. So there's 360 people, at least probably 400 people in that room. And we're sitting there waiting to find out where our mission is going to be for the day. And the door opens in the back, and we're called to attention, and the commanding officer marches down the center aisle. We called him the old man, and he was 25 years old. But it was a battlefield promotion, not like Colonel Francis, who's gone through an awful lot of training to get his rank today. But in any event, the commanding officer got up on the stage like this, and back of us was a huge map of Europe, which covered up by curtains, and he pulled the curtains back. Operation Overlord. This was D-Day. I knew there was going to be an invasion. We didn't know when or what or anything, information about it. So here I am. I'm going to be part of the largest land invasion in the history of man. So we see our route. The route is to take us over the English Channel to a little town called Caen, C-E-N, in France. And our mission for the day was to destroy the roadways in that area, because the intelligence said there was 7 to 9 German panzer units sitting back of that area, waiting to find out where to rush to the front. Well, we got over the area, and as I crossed the English Channel, just like Colonel Francis said this one, I was looking like a grandstand seat. I was looking down on all these ships. I've heard over the years that any people say it was 5,000, some say it's 7,000, 9,000. Whatever the case, it looked like you could get out and walk across the English Channel. There were so many ships, all moving toward the coasts. Saw that. I'm part of history. Isn't that something? Anyway, we continued on, got over the area of Caen, France, and the weather had been so bad that actually Eisenhower had delayed the invasion one day because of bad weather. We still had bad weather, but we went ahead and flew. As we circled the base, we didn't know where Caen was. It was underneath us, but we couldn't see anything because of the cloud cover. And we just circled and circled and circled until eventually the commanding officer said, okay, boys, we got to go back to base and refuel. We're running low on fuel. So the whole group started back toward England. And I'm on the outside of the formation as we're circling. I'm using more fuel. As we get over about the middle of the English Channel, my engineer, gunner, tapped me on the shoulder and says, we're getting really, really low. We're about to run out of fuel. So I bailed the crew out over the English Channel, and just about the time I got them bailed out, all 4 engines stopped. Now, the change from 4 1,200 horsepower engines, the roar, that noise, to dead silence was awesome. So I immediately had to push the control wheel to the firewall and start diving, and so I wouldn't stall out. And as we're diving down toward the water, I looked back, see if my crew was out, and everybody was gone. But I also saw I still had 10 bombs sitting on the back of me. Of course, we hadn't dropped them, and I forgot about them. So as we dived faster and faster toward the English Channel in a deep dive, I salvoed the bombs, levered right down here. He pulled it, mechanically it pulled the pins on those bomb bay doors, and the doors dropped off. It pulled the pins on the racks of the bombs, and the bombs all dropped out. And those bombs had little propellers on the front of them that, as it spun, it armed the bombs. We were so close to the water, they didn't have enough time to spin to arm, so they all dropped in the English Channel, probably still there. And as I don't know what speed I was going, it was very, very fast, and as I pulled out, because I was about to hit the water, as I pulled out, and I also knew, without thinking about it, the B-24 had a terrible history of immediately sinking when it hit water. So we just didn't really think much about that except to try to get the plane level. And as it pulled out, right in front of me, just like God placed it there, was this rock bar. It was not a sandbar, it was a rock bar sitting out in the English Channel, right there in front of me. I couldn't have done anything better about it. I just pulled it in, I hit that rock bar, probably 300, 400 miles an hour. And remember now I've got the bomb bay doors off and the big thing, and now it becomes a giant scoop shovel, scooping up that rock, and the whole back of the B-24 breaks off. And as it continues to spin down the rock, I see all 4 engines pop, 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 pop out. It ground off the fuselage, tore off the nose, and we finally stopped. And the only thing left was the wing and the cockpit. The other pilot and the navigator, who said he wasn't going to jump, so he got up there and rode it out with us. We kicked the windshield out and climbed out on the wing. We're all whole. It's interesting when you think about the fact that my crew that I bailed out for safety, most of them drowned in the English Channel. They did not know how to get out of parachutes over the water. So as they dropped in the water, the parachutes, the big canvas chutes came down on top of them, and they drowned. So they should have survived. We should have perished. We should have been in the crash or sunk. And we survived. It's awesome to think about how God controls things in your life. And that was a defining moment for me. I started thinking about that. Started thinking about the fact that there's somebody controlling everything in this world. So one of the things I hope every one of you young people have is a relationship with your Lord God. Because you have to have that as you go through life. Other things I'd like to talk to you about a little bit is know your history, know where you've been so we know where we're going, and be active, be a part of the political scene, no matter where your stand is, but be active. Be civil. Please be civil. And put yourself in the other person's shoes. Think of what they're thinking about, what their viewpoint is. Because then you can have differences of opinion, and you can talk about it, but you don't have to fight about it. And that's the way this country has always operated, and that's the way we want to continue to operate it. Well, that's the end of that story. I've got a lot more as I continue to fly missions. I switched over to B-17, which is a much better aircraft for the European theater, high altitude. Actually, we flew our missions at 29 to 30,000 feet. And as Colonel Francis said, there's open airframes, minus 70-degree air. We had no heat except for electric suits, electrically heated suits. And if you exposed any skin, like a finger or a hand, for 3 minutes at minus 70, you'd have to have it amputated. Your oxygen mask, we wore oxygen mask for probably 80% of the mission, anything above 10,000 feet. But there was a weep hole in the oxygen mask that carried the condensate from your breath down. And I'd have an icicle down through my chest and stomach, frozen. Some of the oxygen masks, those weep holes plugged up and people suffocated. But it's a miserable, miserable existence. But I completed 35 missions, did a complete tour, and came back to the United States and started a civilian life. And I've continued my history. Okay, I think that's it.
Round of applause.